Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Baumann here with the Designer Show. I'm on today with John Schrader. John, say
Hi,
hi.
everybody.
And we got our guest, Bryan Kaplan. Bryan, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great to have you here from sunny Canada.
You got it. It's a beautiful day here in lovely Canada.
Canada. Whereabouts in Canada are you?
We are in Toronto, Ontario.
All right, cool. Well, welcome. Yeah, Toronto, I've been there, and it's as beautiful as the Twin Cities. It reminded me a lot of the Twin Cities when I was through there, and yeah, you have a really nice city. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
awesome.
Welcome. And today we are going to talk about.
We're going to talk about job costing and finances in, whether you're a designer, remodeler, or custom home builder. We're going to talk about, really 16 financial mistakes. It's funny. My wife was like, "Why are there 16?" And I was like, I started writing. I was like, top 10. We're going to do a top 10 because I saw yours with Kyle, and I was like, yeah, let's do a top 10. And I was excited about that. And then I started putting them in, and I'm like, well, this one's got to go in there too. So then we were at 11, and I was like, hey, let's go to, you go to the next one. You're like 15. And then I was like, man, this 16th
talking about
one
construction world. Yeah, people screw up a lot with money in the construction world. So, and then any world. I mean, it's not necessarily screw ups. It's just awareness, different ways to do things, stuff like that. So, but before we get into that, Bryan, tell me, what's your favorite passion? What's your passion? What's your favorite hobby that isn't work related? Do you have any of those? Because I know you work a lot.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, I work a lot. My wife would always say I don't need any more hobbies, but yeah, I'd say the thing that I enjoy the most is playing ultimate frisbee. And so,
that's right.
In the pandemic, we're not traveling for tournaments, but that's something that is a regular part of my life. So it's been a really interesting summer for me, is that as everyone has gone through this, of course, and their life looks different than some of the stuff that you do. But yeah, that's what I like to fill my time with outside of work.
And you're a serious frisbeer, right?
I try to be.
Yeah, I mean, you compete on a pretty big level, don't you? Pretty high level.
Yeah. We, we're on the regional, national, and even international level. We went to Worlds a couple of years ago. To be clear, we are not at that top level of the international level. We are definitely down towards the bottom. But just being on that stage was really a really cool experience.
That's great, man. That's so cool. Well, tell me, Bryan, how did you get into this industry, the construction industry?
I think, like a lot of people, I fell into it. And my wife of now 16 years, at the time, 21 years ago, bought a house, and I just started renovating it. Her father and mother had basically, throughout their time, had always bought houses and fixed them up and then sold them. And so they kind of just like dropped me into this. I went to school for sports medicine, but kind of fell into the business, is really the story.
So you were a contractor for a long time, right?
That's right. Yeah, I started off as really like a
carpenter. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, I started off as like a bricky laborer, transitioned to carpenter's helper, and then like carpenter, lead carpenter, site super, project manager, general manager. Had my own business for about 7 years as well early on, and so it's been just like a long, a long windy road in this business.
Wow. Yeah, you moved through the industry pretty quick, so that's really cool. And what drives you? What makes you want to teach people about this kind of stuff? Finances, and I know you do a lot of other things that you teach about, but what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, I'm really just passionate about helping people. I've been mentoring people for a very long time. Whether I was a carpenter, I was helping teach junior carpenters, or I was, site super and directing traffic on the job site, working with our trade partners, PM, GM, mentoring teams, and, overall business strategy. And it just kind of like shifted to the point where I was like, I can help so many more people by actually doing this professionally, and kind of left that client side to work with, some of the great, people that I've also met in the last, 2 and just a bit years now.
Cool. Well, I'm excited about your topic today because you got a lot of things to cover. But before we get to that, what kind of drives you? What makes you so excited to get up every day and do this kind of stuff? I know you just covered some of that, but you got any other thoughts to that?
I think it's a lot of it is really just my clients. It's really exciting to see, they're kind of an inspiration for me, like seeing the people out there that are super receptive, whether you're coaching with me or coaching with somebody else. It's just really exciting to see people being open to this and, taking it upon themselves to basically get 1% better every day. And, you don't really have to measure that, to be clear, but it's just that concept of like, what's the one thing I can do today? It can be super, super tiny to improve myself and my business.
Yeah, it's cool. I've been in this industry a long time. John, I know you have been too. And one of the things I was always really good at when I was doing remodeling was keeping track of my costs of the jobs. For some reason, I just really enjoy keeping track of things. And I really enjoy keeping track of my job costs. And so I always knew whether I made money or lost money on every job. And yes, there was those jobs that went the wrong way. But I knew it. I knew it going in, before the job was done. I knew where I was at. So, with that kind of information, I could manage my business a little better, and it really helped a lot. So, but let's go ahead. Don't have a ton of time here, and you've got a lot of information to cover. And I know you've got an offer for everybody at the end of this presentation, which is pretty exciting. I can't wait to show it to people. Bryan is going to have a handout here, and I'm going to run a little ticker banner on the bottom for a while here, where you can get that. Let me see. It's this button right here. So the handout is bit.ly.16 finance mistakes. And you can grab that, and Bryan will email you the handout that he's about to show. So Bryan, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you and let you just have at it. And let's add you to the stream here. So there's your screen. And awesome. Have at it. John and I will probably be asking a few questions along the way. So it's all yours, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in as well. And really, finances it's funny. Like I always joke about it. There's nothing really sexy about finances, right? And job costing, like you said, Dan, it's like you get excited by it. I get excited by it. I get excited about learning about people's finances and helping them become better in their business. And so, my mom's an accountant, and so that's kind of where some of that, I think, passion comes from. But ultimately, it's really about, if we look at the results of, our numbers, they will tell us the story that sometimes maybe we don't want to hear. But the reality is, as you said, Dan, it'll allow you to run your business a lot better, allows you to make much better decisions. I get a lot of questions about sales process stuff, dealing with objections and all this sort of thing. This is all connected, right? If we know our numbers.
It's the old, you can manage what you measure.
Exactly.
And if you're measuring the finances of your business, including job costing, you can manage it a whole lot better.
Absolutely. And, you can just make those strategic decisions. And it also gives you like this confidence when you're speaking with a client, right? Knowing your numbers, there's so much power in that information. And it sounds cliche, but, it really transcends to any industry, really, and any business that you might own. But once you understand your numbers and you're able to kind of measure those and track those, you get into these scenarios where you just know where you can't take a project for a certain cost. It just gives you this knowingness when you speak with your clients that these are kind of the facts of the case, and allows you to go into that negotiation willing to walk away. Yeah. So important. So we'll jump in. The top 16, again, it's an odd number, I know, but we'll roll with it. So number 16 is the financial reports. So we get those 4 financial reports sent to us by our accountants every year, and most people don't know what those mean, right? Most people, and I think we've probably all seen this before. And to be honest with you, when I first started getting them, I didn't know what they meant either. And really, these reports are a way to kind of benchmark and show you over a period of time. And typically, I'll say fiscal year today a lot. Fiscal year meaning that financial year. Probably a lot of you are familiar with what I'm talking about, but your financial year may or may not follow the calendar year. So they are 2 separate things, but often one and the same. So if I just say fiscal, that's what you know what I mean. But basically, the financial reports help explain your fiscal year. They help explain how your company did. They all do something a little bit different, but really understanding those reports and having them explained to you in a way that is, I guess in plain English, which is one of the things that I do with my clients, is help them understand it. What is it really trying to tell me, as opposed to just a bunch of stuff on a page? As we'll get into in a second, is, the concept of these reports being set up properly. And what do we mean by that? Well, when we talk accounting, and we'll only get this granular right here in this presentation. When we talk about accounting, what we're really talking about is something called the chart of accounts. And the chart of accounts is much like your personal bank account, your credit card, your car, account, car payment account, your mortgage account. Essentially, there are all these different accounts, money accounts in your life. Accounting is the process of basically managing the transactions through all those different accounts. It's as simple as that. That's the simplest way I can explain it.
A list of everything you have, you earn, and everything you spend, basically, right?
Exactly. And so, again, understanding these reports is really crucial. This is where you can make some strategic business decisions, and you'll be able to use these as benchmarks in comparing, different time periods and all of that. So that's number 16. Number 15 is a funny one, because I put it in here. I put it as a mistake because I absolutely hate the concept of break even. And I might be one of the only people that actually talks about it this way, but I just despise this term. It's the same. I have the same level of, I was going to say despisal, but I don't think that is a word, but disdain. Let's use disdain for break even that I do for free estimating, which we'll get to in a second. And the reason I don't really like break even is because for me, it's a mindset, right? Break even means I'm literally survival accounting. That's what it's really telling me. It's not thriving accounting. And the difference between those two is survival accounting is the jobs that you take just to keep the team busy versus the jobs that you take for the right client at the right price to be profitable. And that's how I look at it.
Okay.
And so I've heard lots of people say, hey, you should know your break even on your estimate. And to me, that's total nonsense because I don't want to be thinking like that. I don't want to know what my bare break even point on an estimate is because that's not why I'm taking that job. Because if I was going to do that, I would sit at home and go broke, right? Someone used that line. One of my clients used that the other day. I love that line. So that's the first thing. Now, the second form of break even, this is something I teach, but at the end of my sort of accounting class, is the concept of knowing your break even point in the year. And I think this is a good metric for people to look at is understanding that point in time of which you've sort of sold, you've completed, you've invoiced, and you've collected enough money that the profit component that you pulled out, right, that was basically your gross margin, can cover all of the expenses in your fiscal year. Once again, I'll use that term. So that's an important metric for people to know and manage. But other than that, I want you to strike this term from your memory. We never talked about it.
We don't talk break even. Okay.
That's right. Estimating. This is a huge, this is like, we could spend hours talking about this. Of course, I run an entire masterclass on estimating for that very reason. And this is something that any business owner absolutely has to manage and has to deal with on an ongoing basis, especially, of course, in the renovation, remodeling, new custom home building, design world. We all are involved in estimating. And a long time ago, someone decided that, as a competitive advantage, they would just do this work for free, right? And then everybody's since followed suit. We see a lot of free estimates on trucks and websites and banners and all this sort of thing. I'm passionate about not estimating for free. And, the point for me is that it's a cost of the work, right? It's as simple as that. It's
I've always told my clients, we'll do a complimentary consultation. Okay. Well, we'll talk to you for an hour, maybe for free.
Yeah.
We never use the word free. It's always complimentary because that annotates that there's a value associated with it. Okay. So if you've ever followed Michael Stone, and I know a lot of people on this call will have, and if you've listened to me over the years, strike free from every piece of advertising that you have in your business, period.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely. And so, the thing about estimating is, first and foremost, we can't do it for free. You're going to see this twice in this presentation today because that's how passionate I am about it. But, the other thing about estimating is that, and the reason I teach a masterclass on it is because I want people to slow it down. I want people, and the concept of free estimate is quick, right? That's the thing. It's like everyone accelerates to get to that number. What we really want to do is understand a client's investment level, not how much is their budget, how much do you have. Strike that verbiage from your mindset. What's the investment level you'd like to put towards this project, kind of thing? Reframe it, right? That does something for someone's mindset. I teach that in the sales class. So, but the idea here is that with estimating, you have to slow it down because you've got to respect that estimating, a estimate is really like one of the four financial reports, one being the balance sheet. The balance sheet is a snapshot in time, right? It does not report over a period in time. It's at this point in the in September 25th, whatever day we're at, this is the state of your company kind of thing. An estimate's no different. The information is going to change. I'm talking to designers here as well. You know this just as well as I do. As you get your drawings more and more ready, there's more and more detail, right? More and more detail means more and more scope of work, which means more and more cost. And it helps to flush out those unknowns that we had at the beginning. And so, if you even break down the word estimate, best educated guess kind of thing, And so the concept here,
sometimes we call that a wag or a swag.
That's right. Wild ass guess. And that's what we don't. That's what we don't want to get into, right? That's when we rush to get that price.
Then there's a swag, which is a scientific wild ass guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so, ultimately, the importance of estimating, is really that if you slow it down and take the right approach to it, you need to come up with that right number, because you might have to charge a 10,000% markup if you have the wrong starting number to actually be profitable. And that's kind of the big thing there when we talk about that. So, but don't estimate for free. You'll have all of us to answer to. And number 13 is...
I just wanted to make a little comment here. People on the call, feel free to make comments, to add your opinions, things that are working for you. By all means, we're here to carry on a conversation. So we'd love to hear from what you guys have to say. I know Alex just commented. Hi, Alex, how are you? And cool. So Ramon and a few other people have made a few quick comments. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, I know for sure. And please, share any of your comments, questions, anything like that. Please do. I have a tendency to just get ahead of steam, as you guys know.
Go for it. So keep rolling.
So purchase orders. I hear from a lot of people that they're not doing these, right? And not just design build companies or remodelers or builders or whatever, pretty much everybody. I don't find a lot of people are really implementing this. And what I'll hear a lot of the times is we have a subcontractor agreement. And I'll be like, that's great. But is it specific to the project? Does it control the financial terms of that individual project? And so, and the answer is no. And chances are it doesn't. It's also oftentimes something that's outside of whatever maybe project management software system you're using or something like that. And so ultimately what it comes down to is your purchase order becomes your legal record. It becomes your agreement with your trade partners or your vendors. It helps you secure pricing. We're in a very interesting time right now where we're seeing supply chain and all these different costs change so immeasurably. Now, I'm not saying that a purchase order would completely connect you, or rather commit you to a prior COVID price, but at the same time, in normal sort of circumstances, what it can do is control that cost, because by the time you actually buy something, from the time that it's actually picked and selected and all of that, could be quite different. So purchase orders is such an important thing. Again, it's really, really key that we get on the same page with our trade partners and make it very, very clear.
Purchase orders, I think people think it just adds another level of complexity to the whole process. And I'll just throw this in there. You don't have to do a purchase order on every single item in every single job. Just get them going for some of the big things. I mean, your subs and maybe major purchases like your windows and things like that. It's basically, how would you summarize the word purchase order? This is kind of like it's a mini estimate for an item in the job from your sub that you've agreed on.
That's right. Yeah. And I use it as that legal agreement. If there's ever sort of disparity between the final invoice, this will be a pain point that people feel, right? I'm sure people will resonate with this. You get the final invoice and then you're like, well, why is that more? And there's the extras, right? All of a sudden there's all these extras that showed up. And so it's because we didn't clarify in an agreement right at the beginning, kind of thing. And so that's really the idea here. So
Alex was saying he likes the LOI, letter of intent, to move forward with doing an estimate or proposal. So yeah, those are good too.
Awesome.
So and with your accounting, since accounting, you could put those purchase orders in the accounting system, and then when the job comes through and then the bill's ready to be paid, it'll compare it to the purchase order.
Exactly.
Man, how clean can that be?
Yeah, exactly. And, Dan, you're right. It does add a little bit of a layer of complexity. It does add, I always say there's no blue magic pill here, right?
Yeah.
These are systems. These are great building practices that we want to incorporate into our, whether design, build, or construction business.
But it's one of those things, once you get it set up and you get used to working with it, then it's just becomes second nature.
100%.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like, yeah, that's just the way we do it.
The next one's my favorite, and this is always a polarizing topic. Again, the same fellow who decided a long, long time ago that we were going to do estimates free also decided I'm not going to get paid until I actually complete the work, and I'm going to do it in these chunky payments. And I could go on and on and on about this one, but really milestone invoicing, milestone billing is a completely broken process. It creates an inverted relationship between the work and the payment in our industry. And so ultimately what I, preach to everybody is to bill on a scheduled percent complete basis. Find a way to structure that in your business. Whatever you're doing, find a way to actually do that, simply because you cannot control your cash flow. You can run into, look, we're both in cold weather places, right? You can run into a snowstorm that completely stops production for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. It makes builders do funny things because we won't buy or put down deposits for the next phase of construction because we're waiting on that cash from the last draw. So it changes the whole dynamic. Ultimately, it really sort of takes the project outcome from the central goal and makes it, an individual goal. And what I mean by that is it makes us builders do different things in terms of what would be best for the project.
So let me just comment about that 1 second.
Yeah.
Progress payments. I know Michael Stone talks a lot about doing lots of smaller payments, doing it based on a completion of foundation, completion of, or actually not completion of, but start of. Never do a completion of, a start of drywall, start of hanging cabinets, start of, there's different ways to do it. You just want to, I think the whole goal of what you're talking about is to make sure you're ahead of the game with the cash in versus your cash out, right?
100%. Yeah. And really, when we talk about over under billing, that's really the metric that we look at. That's that KPI that we watch, the key performance indicator, that we really sort of watch. The challenge with the start of phase, and, obviously, we know each other well, and I'm a big Michael Stone fan as well. But here's the thing I'll challenge is that it's the same thing as a completion, because you can't actually get paid. You can't start something until something else is completed. So it's really, I understand the phrasing of it's a little different, but it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. And I agree though with the smaller payments. That's kind of the idea, right? I always would talk about this with my teams, is that once a client, if you don't cash flow as a project manager, if you do not cash flow your project along the way, when a client gets a bill for $100,000, $200,000, that hurts. Even though they've committed to spending that money, there's a psychological thing that happens in a client's mind where there's a little bit of fear and flight that comes into their mindset. And so what we want to do is we do want to break it up. It's good for us. It's also good for your client psychology. So it's something that's super important to really try to internalize. If you have challenges with that, reach out to me. I'll help you phrase that in terms of a conversation to your client that will make sense to them.
Yeah. So it doesn't count if after you frame the first wall and you hang a piece of sheetrock on it, you don't get paid.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Don't joke. I once saw a house go up not too far from me, around the corner, and they were framing, and they just put the second floor level on, and they were starting to put windows in on the main floor, and they were still framing above. It was bonkers to me. So, yeah. So, yes, Alex, you heard me challenge. I challenge.
Yeah. Well, it's not a challenge. It's just another way to look at it.
It's another perspective. That's right. Exactly.
I'm going to put in there whatever works for your company to keep your cash flow ahead of the outflow.
100%. And the thing that I've discovered, and Dan, you and I, we work with people all across both countries, really, and you just recognize that everyone's got a business structure. Everyone does something a little bit differently, and ultimately, these are kind of what we talk about, sort of best building practice kind of thing, or best company practice. So, yeah, cool. So,
crucial concepts. All right,
and my favorite
number 10.
We skipped one. We skipped probably the most important one. Cost tracking, job costing, tracking, whatever we want to call it. What is it? You can measure what you track. You can manage what you measure. Yeah, exactly. So we look at that sort of scenario, and job costing is really, if you want to get better at estimating, you want to become more profitable, job costing is the answer. That is the secret sauce to pretty much any business. If you have a product business, you need to understand, what is my cost of goods, right? How much does the product cost? How much does the packaging cost? How much does the shipping cost? What are my fees to whatever vendor or whatever outlet that I'm actually, using to supply that kind of thing? Those are all costs that we need to know. It's no different in a construction business. You need to understand your labor. If you have an internal team, that's usually the largest sense of area of overage that we see, materials, and our trade partners. So, and there's so many things that we have to actually look at in there.
Yeah, there really are. And I was just going to comment on this a little bit because I deal with a lot of contractors, and it really surprises me how few of them actually do job costing accurately.
That's right.
It's really scary sometimes. They're getting better. More and more people are doing it, so they're getting it. But man, it's so crucial to, if you don't do any other accounting, do your job cost tracking, period. Because at least you'll know. It's kind of like checkbook accounting. If you got money in your checkbook, you're making money, right?
That's right.
Not necessarily.
Exactly. And here's the part I'll add to this is, like, there is a wide gamut of what job costing can look like depending on the type of business that you're running, but also even the same, you take two businesses that are the same, ultimately, the job costing can follow a very wide spectrum. Start with the 1%, right? Don't overcomplicate. Just get started. That's the big lesson.
And speaking to designers that don't do building, same thing, man. You've got to get out there and track how much time you're putting into every design that you do. And like Chief Architect has a time tracker you can use. That works pretty well. But you really got to be diligent about that. And it's really hard. It's a lot of work, especially when you're bouncing between projects. Keep track of what you're putting into those designs. But once you have an idea of what it took to do the design on this project, well, if you run into that again, you'll know, oh yeah, I had that much time, so it should be about this much. And
the components, right, Dan? Like the components of it, right? We don't just call it one thing. It's not just design. There's all these different things that that you'll go through in terms of floor plan, elevation, sections, and the stages that you go through, and the level of completion, and all the things that you add in there, right? So, I mean, that's the lens to look through as a designer. That's kind of your product, if you will, right? Those differences of services. As a construction company, we've got those other inputs, but you need to track that and understand, because that's really where you actually start to gain some leverage, right? Where you start to get reports that make sense for you, that help you to really, understand. As you said, when you run into a similar project, remember I talked about that confidence at the beginning when you're speaking with a client, like, you've got empirical data that can help you, basically build that confidence. So,
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got to keep rolling. There's some comments here. What's the best way to job cost? Excel sheets, QuickBooks, different accounting programs. There's all sorts of different ways to keep track of costs. But let's keep rolling on. So I don't need to keep interrupting, because I know we're on a time frame here.
No, all good. Sorry, it keeps jumping. So the elephant in the room is the change order, right? We get this elephant. We get this elephant standing in my room right here. He's staring at me right now. So here's the thing about change orders, right? They're not a bad thing, people. Really, they're a natural part of life. They're a natural part of a process and a project. I always tell people it is an organic process. Things are going to change. Your perspective right now, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, is going to likely change as we go through this project. You're going to go to someone's house for a dinner party and see something you like, and you might want to make a substitution. We might be, especially for the remodelers out here, the best laid plans of men and mice. You open up the walls, you find what you find in the discovery period, right? Things are going to change. What's really important about change orders is you get out in front of it right at the beginning of your process and explain it. In that intro client journey experience, start talking about it, right? And don't make it a big deal. I was literally on the phone with a client today and talking about this, and they got in front of it, and the clients were like, yeah, no problem. And then the thing about it is that every time you come back to it, they're already desensitized to it a little bit, right? Because you've already put it out in the open and said, this is basically what it is. This is how we handle it. So this is what it looks like for you, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. This is the steps that I'm going to walk you through to help you help explain the additional cost and give you the opportunity, and sometimes they don't, but the opportunity to either say yes or no kind of thing. This is another one, much like the purchase orders, that I hear people say the words, I'm sure we could do a much better job of this than what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those items that'll kick you in the ass every time if you don't do it right.
100%. You get to the end of a project, you've done a change order every single time something's changed, there's no conversation.
Oh, I know.
End of story.
Yep.
So do your change orders.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know why this keeps jumping. Post-mortem. Sorry, it's a gruesome picture I found there, isn't it? Everybody zone in on that for a second. That's gruesome.
Body bag, yeah. Wow.
Post-mortem is actually a fun thing, right? This is where, if you like job costing, you get excited. I'm going to go back just for a split second to the job costing. Job costing, the whole idea about it is that you're doing it in progress so that in real time, you understand what your numbers are, right? Dan, you mentioned that earlier in our show today. And that's such a crucial thing because I think far too often we get to the end of the project. That's when we find out, right? Like you said, checkbook accounting or bank balance accounting, which we'll get to. We kind of like, okay, I've got to pay all this. This is how much I'm getting from the client. What's left, kind of thing. Right. And so, job costing will show you in real time. And then when we talk about postmortem, this is not just financial, right? I have it in the financial talk, but financially, we want to see how we did on this project because that's the actual empirical data that we then take from project to project to project to project. We start to aggregate all of that information, whether it's an Excel sheet, QuickBooks report, whatever it is that you're using, and start to actually see trends. What are the cost codes that are typically over, right? The top 5 cost codes, what are those, right? Let's zone in on our estimating process on those. Let's start to take averages for things so we can get a high and a low. That's a very common thing that people do, right? In that initial budget conversation is, let's start with a high and a low. Well, where does that number come from? You can't just pull it out of, standardized, book, because I don't believe in that, because every business is different. Every region is different.
It gives you something to compare to. Yeah.
Sure. That's about it, really. But ultimately, that's like looking over the fence at what someone else is charging for a markup, and they may be wrong is the reality. So Postmortem is also a great opportunity for you to connect with your team and actually use this as like a culture and a team building exercise to understand what went well, what didn't go well. So it's not just financially, but the finances will always tell you the story if you're willing to listen. So postmortems are super important. Manage
what you measure, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Labor burden. Labor burden is another one. So for all those people that have internal team members, if you're just a single sort of owner operator or a really small team, it doesn't really matter. You still have to understand your labor burden, and everyone's very familiar with workers' comp and my government deductions and all those different sort of matching pension plans and all that sort of stuff. But there's a whole slew of other things that people forget to do, right? They forget to take in the actual cost of shirts, and if there's a truck stipend or a cell phone stipend, all those different things. So it's the cost that it takes to put somebody in the field, right, is super critical. And so when we calculate our labor burden and then we come up with our charge out rate. So if you're a cost plus builder and you're posting your charge out rate, or if you're a fixed cost builder and that's how you're working it out, we still have to get all those other costs in there to understand our labor burden properly.
Burden. It's amazing how many items go into labor burden.
Yes, it's for sure. It's funny. I ran out of columns in the spreadsheet, the calculator that I provide to my clients. I started running out of columns because it was getting really, really wide, and I was like, okay, we got to find a way to put some of these together. So there's a lot that goes in there. There's no question about it.
Yes.
Number 7, it's a financial mistake here because you didn't get into business to be an employee of your own company, right? Even though you might pay yourself a salary, which is the best way to do it. That's where Mr. Stone and I will agree. Always take a salary and pay yourself as an employee. However, your mindset cannot be of that, right? You have to be an owner in your business. So this is very critical. Are you charging for your self-performed work in your business in conjunction with paying yourself a salary to run the business? Because, and I always say this, is that if you had to hire a carpenter, a site super, a project manager, whomever it is, to do whatever aspect of the work that you're doing, you would have to pay that person. So why aren't you paying yourself? Stop bank balance accounting, stop looking at what's left over and say, no, I'm going to pay myself as an owner of this business, not as an employee.
So that's where the salary comes in, and you're paying yourself an hourly for the work that you do in the field. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yeah. The idea is however you want to slice it, right? Pay yourself a salary, but make sure that you're costing out the work, because a lot of owners will fall into this trap where they'll say, okay, I'm paying myself $60, $80, $100,000 a year. if I'm going to self-perform some of this work, well, I'm not going to like actually put this into the estimate, right? Because that might be a way they can shave costs and be competitive on that, something like that, you know? So value your time, people. Value your time and the energy and the expertise that you bring, and just the physical effort as well. Again, if you're self-performing.
You know, contracting's so much fun. You just want to work for free, right?
I don't know about you, but I had a lot of bad experiences working for free.
I did that a few times. Yeah. You know,
and
it still happens.
So, you know, value yourself as a business owner. And this is really what we talk about with like CEO mindset versus, you know, being an employee in your own business.
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to stop you right now, man. I want you to, and I mentioned early on that we were going to talk about your program you've got coming up at the end of this presentation. I want you to talk about it right now, and then we're going to come back and we'll talk about the other 6 items you've got on your list.
For sure.
So let's go. Why don't you go ahead and pull that up and let's take a look at it. So I'm going to flash this up here right now. And Brian, why don't you tell us about your course coming up? You want to bring up that screen? Can you?
Yeah, I'm just doing it. Let me just.
So it's if you're watching this after the date that Brian's going to talk about here, what you could do is you can go to Brian's website to see what else he has available. It's constructionconsulting.co.
That's right.
You'll be able to get some information there about other courses, because you do a lot of nice courses, man. You've got some good stuff going there. So
yeah, appreciate this. And they're just a ton of fun. So I run these master classes, and they are a live delivery group sort of format. And ultimately what we're doing in this is we are, you have it, you got it up.
There you go. Is that you?
Nope.
That's my site. Okay. All right, it's on the wrong computer. There we go.
There we go. I know that guy. So yeah, what I do with this masterclass, we run these in a group experience. You know, we have, you know.
By the way, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. We got a minimum of like 20 people in these classes. So what's really wonderful about this experience is I think a lot of us as builders, when I was, you know, working as we call it renovators up here in Canada. But when I worked as a renovator, you belong to some like remodeler circles or round tables and stuff like that. And it was great. But at the same time, we never really were sharing information in a really open format. And getting in a call with people from all across Canada and the US is really amazing, because what you realize right away is that everybody has the same sort of problems that you have. And ultimately, you know, it's just a matter of being able to connect with people and ask them what they're doing and find out best practices. And, you know, I just finished my estimating masterclass, and there was some incredible connections that came out of it, and, you know, people getting some like incredible sort of networking community. And that's the one thing that, you know, I think we know is really lacking. And that's what I love about, you know, what you're doing, Dan, with this show as well. And something that I'm all about is building community in this industry. And so, and so the Know Your Numbers program is really, you know, we talk about the 16 sort of finance mistakes, but it's really A to Z, and we go through basically everything. What are these financial reports? How do I set up my job costing? What are the options for platforms? I'm not going to say this is the one best way to do it, because the truth is that everyone's business is structured a little bit differently. And so, but what we do is give you options so that you can actually accelerate this and get some of this work product done. Talk about change orders, purchase orders. We talk about cost to complete and WIP, which we're going to get to when we jump back to the presentation in a moment. And so ultimately, it's really an A to Z course. As I scroll through here, I'll just kind of show you.
It's a nice page. It's a really nice page you've got laid out. It really explains what you're doing really well.
Yeah, that's one of my beefs about things. And, you know, for anybody that even comes to this page and has feedback about how I can improve it, let me know. I'm super open to that. You know, when you go to a website and you can't figure out what is it that they sell, how much does it cost, how does it work? I really want to make it super clear. So, you know, how it works is we get on these calls, and they're 6 weeks, 1 hour calls. We go through some live delivery of content, but it's really an opportunity for us to all discuss some of the topics. And then we go into breakout groups inside of Zoom. So if you've never been in one of these, it's really, really cool. You get 20 or 30 people, you break them up into little groups, and you get to go into a private room with 4 or 5 other builders from wherever.
I'm on a class right now. I'm doing that. It really is a lot of fun. It's really cool.
It's
amazing.
Never
done that before. Yeah.
And it's awesome. You just get to ask questions. You get connected with a community that you'd never really, like, how else would you do that? So, so it's really amazing. You know, I'm going to be having, you know, videos and resources up on my learning platform, and then the breakout groups like I talked about. And really the main goals are kind of gaining that in-depth knowledge of the 3 different levels of accounting. So people are probably like, what do you mean 3 different levels of, there's 16 problems and there's 3 levels? Oh my God, there's so much. So the 3 levels very simply is project level accounting, projects. So all of your projects together, looking at all that aggregated data, and then your CEO level view, right? Talking about targets and budgets. We're talking about, your overall gross margin, kind of mixing in all of your company expenses. That's where breakeven, that little breakeven devil term comes in, all that sort of thing. So there's those 3 levels, and really it's an overview of that. And then we dissect kind of each one.
Okay. Couple minutes left, Brian. You got to go quick. What do you got? Templates.
Real actionable things. So, and then there's templates. You get access to me over email.
What are your templates real quick? What are those?
Small sample of this: margin and markup calculators, labor burden calculator, which we talked about, and then a lot of financial tracking templates.
Okay. What's back to your templates for 1 second? What are those?
What's that, sir?
The templates? Up here? Yeah. What are your templates?
What are they? Oh, like in terms of like documents or sheets, or they might be a Google Sheet, Excel document, PDF handout, something like that. Something that's actionable that people can use and actually calculate. Some of these things, use them as tracking sheets. So,
all right, nice.
Yeah, I know there's a question earlier about what's the best way to job cost, for example. Right. So there's that as well. And it's really about this mastermind experience. So you can hop over to the page and look, and there's a pile of people that have been in my classes that have left, wonderful testimonials. And, special bonus for everybody just here in this group, these links aren't public yet, is I'm going to be, giving you 15% off if you sign up by the end of this month, 15% off of the course fees, as well as I'm doing a 1-hour master planning session for your 2021. So this is a 25-page book that I have. It's a bonus that you fill out. We get on the call and we hammer in your 2021, make it your best year yet. So COVID pending.
So again, if you're seeing this after this is all expired, just go to Brian's website and constructionconsulting.co, and you all have things going all the time. If you don't have a class going, you can join Brian's wait list and get on that. So
you got it. Exactly. And that's it. Yeah. So that class starts in October, and it'd be super great to have, if you guys have questions, reach out to me. There's an email button down here somewhere.
Of course, the bottom line is, how much is it? People always want to know that. What's the investment? Yeah. What's your investment, people? Yeah.
The investment is $997, but with the 15% discount, it comes to exactly $847.75, I think.
Yeah, that's a deal. For everything you're offering here, that's a pretty good deal.
So, and you can reach out, and you can also book a call. There's a button higher up on the page there that you can book a call if you want to chat about it. So
that's pretty cool. That's nice. Yeah, you can talk to Brian personally if you want to find out more about it. So there you go. Exactly. Well done, my friend. Okay, continue on. Number 6.
Yeah, number 6, just get back up to this here. Just hit the Chrome tab. And there we go. All right, are we back?
I got to put you back into the stream. There you go. Did I get the right one?
Yeah, it always jumps. So number 6 is job costing. So we already talked about this a little bit, but this is really about, the labeling of receipts is really getting our team to help us here, right? Is like, you buy something, whether it's an invoice that gets sent to you, a bill, whatever it is really labeling by project, labeling by cost code. And then, making sure that we can actually take this data and have it mean something. So what do I mean by that? A moment ago, I talked about just don't overcomplicate it, right? Don't overcomplicate your job cost coding. I have lots of clients that are doing incredibly well using 36 cost codes. That's it, right? Doesn't have to be 300, 12. Right. I have clients that have 1,200 cost codes. It's crazy, and really, I don't think anybody needs that. So don't overcomplicate it, but really, it's all about understanding what the different inputs are. Again, if your business is a little bit different, that job costing might look a little bit different.
I used to have a stamp that I would stamp my receipts with that had like places for 5 codes and 5 job numbers and a little description on this. So you'd stamp it and you'd write in what you want. And I even had some little Post-its made with the form that I used to keep track of that. So that's every time I had a invoice, I would put that on there, give it to my office person, and she'd make sure it got entered in the right job cost categories. It was really easy, really easy to do.
Once you get it set up, it's easy, right? I mean, that's the reality. You just got to get it set up. So start with something very simple.
And every week, every week she would print out all the reports again, put them in alphabetical order, by job in a 3-ring binder that I would carry with me all the time. It was really cool. And so I always had it with me.
You can pretty much do all that on your smartphone now. Take a picture of the receipt and put all that in there, and
exactly,
you're done.
Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. Coming back again to one of the things I'm most passionate about is not working for free. This is a problem that just riddles our industry. There's no question about it. And so I see a comment in there. Mike wrote, and this is not necessarily related to free estimates, but he said he worked for free for fun, dropped an LVL in his saw and broke it. Cost me $170 to work for free. And I feel bad about that. That actually hurts me because I feel that pain. I've been there myself. It sucks to work for free. And again, it's really all about, charging for this process. People won't value what they don't pay for, quite simply. It also helps you really add some friction to the process to really squeeze out the people that you really want to work with, and the people that, you're like, okay, I guess I'll work for you, but they're not the right client for you.
Hey, Larry.
Charging enough.
Cool.
Dan, you and I know this very well. This is something that we'll all talk about and pretty much every client I get on the phone with, when we start to unpack the numbers and we start to learn what some of the challenges are in the business, ultimately comes down to not charging enough, right? And there's some head trash in there, right? There's some value.
Well, it's not charging enough, but then there's watching your costs too. I mean, if you're overpaying for things, that's part of it too. So that's why that's why the purchase order things are so important. So if you got a sub and they submit an invoice and then they're submitting, $500 worth of extras that you didn't plan on and you didn't catch that, that's the other part of it. So charging enough is, don't compete with others, compete with yourself.
Very quickly, I'll say that in my estimating class, there was a fellow that was in there who texted me after our week 4, which is where we talk about markup and margin, which is a fun one. And he basically wrote to me, "Mine successfully blown." And then he had that emoji with the head blowing up and said that, long and short is that they've been charging 10% and they decided that night that they're going to start charging 30% on everything that goes out the door. And at 10%, I can tell you he probably wasn't profitable, but no. And at 30%, maybe. But ultimately, it's, I think there's some.
And again, those percentages can be skewed a lot of different ways. I mean, if you're, a lot of places you'll hear, you got to mark up 50%, you got to mark up 60, you got to mark up such and such. But the other way to look at it too is, well, you're building some of your costs into your production. You're charging, your planning is a separate line item. Project management's a separate line item. And in labor, you're building costs, you're building some margins into those.
Yes.
So a lot of those things can change the numbers that you say you should mark things up. But really, isn't the bottom line is, what's left over at the end of the year? How do you get to that number? And, what are your costs versus what are you making? And it's interesting how all that stuff comes together. I'm assuming you'll cover a lot of that stuff in your classes.
For sure. We talk about, what you were kind of dancing around there a little bit is what I call cost blend, is basically if you have a design build company, do you have an internal team or do you not? In other words, what's the contribution of one of these chart of accounts into your gross profit for the year? So that's that concept of understanding how we can slice it a little bit differently, which is a great lead into our favorite and often misunderstood concept of margin and markup, and understanding the difference between the two, which I think a lot of people are still confused. They'll say, "Oh, I just made, I made a 50% margin on something," and I say, "Oh, great. So what did you multiply your cost of goods for?" And they say, or by, and they say 1.5. I say, "Cool." I say, "So you actually made a 33% margin." And, that's the distinction between the two to understand what that means. Our markup is derived from our margin. Our margin is derived from how our basically chart of accounts and the cost to operating our business is derived, which is also a little bit from our gross revenue, right? And so ultimately, understanding this is key.
It's really easy to understand how well someone understands the business end of construction when you ask them this question: what's your markup? And if they say, "Well, my markup's 20%," and then I say, "Well, what's your margin?" And they say, "My margin is 20%," or again, I'm just using a number. Don't hold me to that number. They don't quite understand.
It's really 16.67.
Yeah, exactly. So at 50, they say, I do a 50% markup, and then I say, "What's your margin?" "Well, it's 50%, right?" "No, it's 33%. Anyway, it's funny how that works, and that's where that business acumen comes in. So this is a great. That's a really
Alex, great point there. I see that little comment in there. Mr. Michael Stone would say 53% minimum. Look, the answer is this. If you're charging 10% right now and you're like, I can't charge 53%, meet us in the middle. Start at 33.
Yeah.
Just add something right now. And I tell you, people will accept it. So
Penny's asking, is there an average cost percentage over labor and material? And
it's going to vary, right? And I think the important thing is when we talk about cost blend is, on average, in my experience, anywhere from about 15, maximum 20% of a project value is going to be material. So if you charge a very high markup on that, relatively speaking in the job, the contribution to profit for that project into your company is going to be a lot lower.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it's really hard to use averages in that sense, but you can reach out to me. I'm happy to chat as well. So again, there's a button on that sales page where you can book a time to chat with me. So bank balance accounting, right? You call it checkbook accounting, same thing. What's left over, right? That's what I get, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this is that cycle that people are in where you're just busy performing work and selling work, and then you're not keeping score properly, right? We don't really know what's happening. I always use this analogy of a hose bib. In cold weather places, of course, we got to turn them off in the wintertime.
Yep.
You got an internal shut off and an external shut off. Both of them are open. Money's coming in, money's going out, right? It's all kind of going, right? The water's coming down through the foundation and back in, right? It's kind of going all cyclical. And then all of a sudden you shut the inside tap off, and soon enough, the money runs out. The tube is empty, but you need more money, right? And that's kind of the idea here, is that you don't really know you're operating in a deficit because there's always money rolling in, right? The water's always flowing, kind of thing. It's only when the project ends and you look at your postmortem that you realize, hey, or maybe you didn't look at your postmortem, but you don't have that money. If you're struggling to, basically make payroll, pay your vendors, pay your trades, pay yourself, you're in this loop. You're in this bank balance accounting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. A lot of people run their business that way.
And the final one, which is, again, the most.
We're supposed to do a drum roll or something.
Yeah, I was going to do it, but then the mic will start bouncing, and the last one for me is really, and this kind of ties up a lot of the concepts we talked about today. Paying yourself as an owner, not as an employee, right? It's the same sort of mindset. Is I got to look at my business in 3 levels. I got to look at it as there's the in the business part, which is kind of that first project level accounting. My projects all together is where I start to zoom out a little bit and see a little bit on the business type of, sort of view. And then that CEO level view is, what am I tracking for this year? What are my goals? What's my 1, 3, and 5 year financial plan? And how am I going to get there, kind of thing? And it's really just understanding how this all goes together. In this resource, I think there's a couple spots, and this is one of the slides there where there's like a little underlined thing, and you can actually click that and it'll take you to a blog post I've written on LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn in terms of putting up a lot of great art. Well, I think they're great. People tell me they're great. Great, I think relatable articles for you that'll just help to unpack some of the ideas that we've talked about.
Do you have those in your blog too? Those articles?
Yeah. So these are, this is all, I'm just transferring the website now. And so my current website doesn't really have a proper blog area, but then I have a new one that's actually almost ready to launch, and I've got all the blogs in there. But right now you can go to LinkedIn and, just search for me. You'll find me.
Yeah.
And then
Did you say you have a link to LinkedIn on your website?
Yeah. So they're right on the sheet here. When people download this resource, the bottom here, check out my blog. If you click that button, it'll take you right into the article here. And there's also another one linked in this book on change orders as well, which is a recent one I wrote. But that'll take you into my profile. And then you can just look at all the other articles I've written. I've written a ton of stuff about sliding scale margin, change orders, preliminary estimating, how to stop it, how to set up a design agreement so that you can get paid for that preliminary work. There's lots of stuff that I write about that I think if you've taken anything out of this talk today, I think you'll take a lot of value out of, kind of going through some of the articles that I've got up there.
Cool. Yeah. No, you do a lot of stuff there. So, all right. Awesome. So what else you want to add, Bryan?
I think really for me, it's, it really does come down to the idea of, we talk about this 1%, we talk about, making sure that we are financially responsible almost in our companies, right? And understanding that we are business owners, we're not employees, right? Some of us might have fallen into the business like myself, started working with a truck and a skill saw and a I would say screw gun, but really it was corded drills at that point.
Yeah, I remember those. I still have some of those. Yeah.
And then, all of us old timers, when we hear those screw guns now. Those
remember the keys we had to have views on our drills?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Where'd the key go?
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think, the whole thing here is like, if any of this resonates with you, it's a lot that we covered today. Can't say to you, hey, go and implement every single thing, but just take one thing away and try to implement that, right? Whatever it is. And it might be something that is, really front and center for you right now. Change orders is a great one, right? Yeah. That's an easy win, right? It's just start doing change orders, right? And people ask me all the time, well, what do I do? How do I do this? And all this sort of thing. And I'm like, well, what you can do is actually just take a piece of paper, write change order number 1, project name and address, write out whatever it is and put a price there, get the client to sign it. That's really, and I cover that in that blog article as well on change orders so that you can kind of get up to speed on that.
So again, your class is, we do have 5 minutes left. So if you guys have questions, we'll cover them. But your master class is, again, go to bit.ly/numbers discount. And that offer 15% discounts good until when? September
30th.
September 30th. Okay. And if you're watching this afterwards, maybe we could probably put a form at that same link then where people can be directed to what you've got coming up or, just to get on your mailing list so people can find out more about what you've got coming up. Because you do a lot of cool things, Bryan, and it's really cool to have you on our show and sharing this information with everybody. It's really important stuff. I mean, I've seen too many contractors go out of business because they're not doing this stuff. It's not that hard to do if you just have a little bit of discipline and you make up your mind to do it and get it on.
You got it. You got it.
So go ahead, John. You saying something?
I have something to say, but I didn't start yet.
Well, let's look at what we got for comments here. Mike says each project's unique as a designer only. I have to estimate my guest time, but I think it should take some customers. Yeah, that's true. And this is
I like what he said there. Some customers burn through my time differently. This is I just did a blog with a designer and she was talking about this, and I know this very well. It's about revisions. How many layers of revisions do you build into your agreement to make sure that you're capturing your time? And so often, you spend more time, right? Because the client says, oh, could we just do this one little thing or that or whatever it is? And it turns into 2 hours to 3 hours to 4 hours, right? And so what that does though is it dilutes, what you're making.
Yeah, and that's part of planning too. Yeah, like you're just saying.
It's the level of detail you do too.
100%.
One doesn't want the moldings and stuff like that, and the other one does. So.
And then, you've got your offices. Yeah, your city offices that's going to affect your time too. Some offices, some city planners don't require as much detail as others. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is just like job costing, right? I have a client in Colorado and they build in a lot of these like sort of planned subdivisions, and they have different rules and regulations. The permit process is different. The inspection process is different. So when we built his playbook, we built it specifically that way. And then can be a cost difference. And for everybody here, regardless of what we're talking about, coronavirus, pandemic, this has changed how we do business. This has changed the cost in your business. That there's nobody that's not affected from this. Have you changed what you charge? Have you looked at your margin since this all started, right? And actually adjusted your rates to reflect that.
Yeah, exactly. Penny was just commenting, it might be a bad link on one of your pages, so you might want to check that.
Yeah, if that's on if you go into if you do take the discount, I read what was on the screen. If you opt in for that free, it's on those pages on the freebie, the presentation I went through today, that's a PDF that you get. You just click those links. I just checked it and it seems to be working for me. It takes me to LinkedIn, just to clarify, it's not the blog on my actual website.
Oh, okay. Yep, it works for me here. So I'll get right to
you. You should be able to get there, Penny, if you go through that way.
Get to an article. Yep. Okay, cool. Mike says he ran out of alphabet on one project. That's easy to do.
Yeah.
Hey, when I stopped, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like hurricane season. It comes fast and furious, huh? He offers up to 4 revisions per plan design.
Beautiful. Here's what's beautiful about this. You know what he did? Ramon, you've set the expectation for me. If I'm your client, I understand the expectation. It's very clear to me.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. Awesome. Bryan, you get the last word. We got 1 minute left.
I got to say something.
I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
If he gets the last word, I got to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just sitting here listening today, and just like I have in other things that we've done. But thinking back 30 years when I got started on my own, I've been in the business longer than that, but 30 years ago I started on my own, and or 30 plus, I guess. I wish there would have been something. I wish there would have been something like this then, even if it's just the free interaction, that we're having here today.
Yeah.
It wasn't around.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage everybody out there. If you know somebody that's 35 or under, especially, that's in business, like Bryan said, just strapped on an L apron and went to work, get them involved in things like this so that they don't end up being 60 almost. And to the point where, because I look back at it and I did things wrong, but I got through it by physical energy and emotional energy.
Yeah.
And I get to this point in my life and I don't have either one anymore for it.
Yeah. You just don't have the patience, the time, the energy, whatever it takes.
Even if I wanted to do it, it's so painful to even think about losing money on a job now.
Oh,
yeah.
Some jobs I don't even want to think about bidding on because I know it's going to be a struggle,
Yep.
And I don't want to go there anymore.
You know the process, right?
What's that?
I said, your client, the process,
I know which ones are going to say, this is great. I have a few clients that actually smile when they give me a check.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And they're they're willing to pay what it takes, but a lot of people, and I understand that because I don't have money to pay somebody to go do my work for me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do have to make enough to make it so that we're not using up our emotional energy and our physical energy just to get the job done.
That's a really good point, John, because so much of that goes into everything that we do.
Yeah.
Even in designing alone. I mean, it takes a ton of energy and mind energy. And it's just like, it's very exhausting.
And then you throw on top of designing stuff and the software's not working. And that just takes a whole nother toll on your emotions and your energy. So.
All right, cool. John, thanks. That's a great statement. Glad you interrupted and brought that up. Now Bryan can have the last word, okay?
Oh, good. I think there's probably a lot of takeaways for people, but the big thing I'll just tell you is just pick one thing. I think you go to a conference, you sit in on an hour session like this. We talk about 16 different things and a few different side conversations and all of that. And it can be pretty overwhelming, but just try to take one thing away from today, whether it's maybe the thing I talked about with change orders. Take out a piece of paper. I mean, I'm all about digital, but if it has to be a piece of paper, just do that. Maybe it's about charging more. Add 10% right now to every single thing that you estimate. Just try it, because as one of my old bosses used to say, if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no. And the truth is, it's going to be yes more often than you thought. So just take one thing. Feel free, if you do download that resource, hit reply to the email. Let me know one thing that you took out of today that you're going to actually implement into your design or construction business, or both. I love hearing, client wins. I love hearing that people are moving forward. As I said at the beginning, being a coach, it's really exciting just to see people move forward in their business and be open to it.
Cool. Bryan, thanks so much. And I'm going to have the last word. If you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe to our channel and like us on YouTube, and give us a thumbs up in Facebook. And we'd really appreciate that. So Bryan, thanks again, man. It was great to have you here, and everybody check in what Bryan's got to offer. I think you'll be very pleased. See you, everybody. Take care.
Have a good weekend.
Bye. Bye. Bryan, you can say goodbye. That's okay.
Okay. Bye, guys.